welcome back to my channel. My name is Kaylina and this is the Magic Society, and I'm really excited to share my video with you today because me and my mom just got back from New Orleans, or NOLA as they call it down there, and I'm putting this at the beginning of the video just because I want to share kind of our experience before I show you the rest of the video. But oh my gosh, I don't have enough good things to say about New Orleans. Like, I loved it. Like, I think I've said it in a couple other videos, but that is like a place that has been on my list to go visit for like a long time, and I cannot explain to you why I wanted to go there. I just did, and it did not disappoint. I literally can't wait to go back. Like, I'm already thinking about all the things that I would want to do the next time I go. So me and my mom went, which was really cool. We drove down there. We stopped in Memphis first, and we actually got to see Graceland, which was really cool. Like, I feel like everyone needs to experience that once, to go to Graceland and just see it, because it really is amazing to experience. And Elvis was just such an icon, and his story is so sad. And for those of you who are like kind of empathic or can kind of sense like spirit and stuff, I swear to you, he's still there. I just feel his energy. And even just the pictures everywhere, there's just like this haunting quality to the pictures where you can just see that he was just kind of a tortured soul throughout all of his life. And it's sad because he was so amazing and had such talent, and people and life just kind of sucked it right out of him. But really cool, just really cool. You can spend a decent amount of time going through there. You got to see all of his costumes and all of his records, and you'll see in the video just the amount of stuff that they were able to preserve from his life, and it was really cool. And then we got to see Beale Street, and just the amount of, I don't know, music history. That's where some of that kind of was born, you know? That's kind of where jazz and everything was born. And I don't know, I've always loved jazz music. There's something about jazz music that's like no other kind of music that just reaches your soul on a whole other level. And even in New Orleans, when we got there and we visited the French Quarter, like, you could hear jazz music playing. And something about that is so cool, being there and hearing jazz music. And it was almost just like, I don't know if I had a past life in New Orleans. Like, I could almost picture like I don't know, 1940s or something, just living in that time period in New Orleans. I don't know. I just feel like I lived a past lifetime sometime, because the minute I got there, it was just like, I can't even describe it to you. It was so cool. But the history, just the history alone. I love history personally. I think it's so fascinating to learn about each city's history, because that's how we got here today, you know? And for me, I can so clearly picture it in my mind of like what it might have been like back then. And the history alone is so diverse down there, because you had the French come over and kind of develop it, and then you had Spain, who owned it for a little while before it was American, and then I think the Spanish had it again before it came back to being in the hands of America. And the people who first populated New Orleans is crazy to think about, because of course it's not the best area as far as developing a settlement, you know. Obviously history has shown that there's been a lot of disaster in New Orleans, and learning even more of the history behind that just gave me a greater appreciation. And you really do just feel heartbreak for these people, especially with Katrina. And there's not enough to say about that, because, for instance, like, I believe they said that there was like 3 million in the population, and they haven't even reached 1 million since Katrina. That's how many they lost, and that's how many people just didn't come back to the area after that disaster. And the place is just, it's so historic, and there's such a haunting feel to it. And when we were doing our ghost tour, the energy there was overpowering. I can't even tell you. I've never experienced that anywhere else, where the energy was so powerful that at one point, at the one part at the Katrina cemetery, which was also a cemetery where it was unmarked graves. So they had just a bunch of people who either the bodies weren't claimed, or they dedicated their bodies to science, or other Katrina victims, or just people that it was just like an unmarked area. And so lots of death, lots of spirits that were very restless. And my mom mentioned, she's like, do you feel like the ground pulsing, like as if it has like a heartbeat? And so I kind of tuned in, because I felt energy at every single cemetery that we went into. I became very dizzy, almost like I had been drinking, but I hadn't been. And like you could just feel the energy, like pressure. There's just so much pressure. And when I tuned in after she said that, you could 100% feel the ground like beating as if it had a heartbeat. It was wild. And there were trees all the way around kind of the memorial area. And I swear, I don't know why I felt this way, but the trees, I felt like were contributing to that energy, as if it was giving life to the dead underneath, if that makes any sense. I don't know, but there was so much energy in those cemeteries. And let me tell you, those cemeteries are absolutely amazing. If you're that kind of witchy girl or man that likes to go into cemeteries, you have to visit New Orleans. Like, the cemeteries there are like no other. And a misconception about the cemeteries is that originally they thought, well, because of all the flooding, that's why they built the cemeteries above ground. But really, it was something that the Spanish did originally. And so when they came over, they just naturally did that. Now, of course, today, it obviously is more helpful to bury the dead above the ground because of all the water. Because if you go 6 feet deep, you're running into water. So the likelihood of those bodies floating back up to the surface at some point, which is exactly what happened during Katrina, is definitely more likely. But those cemeteries, those plots, they are just magnificent. And there was a cemetery that we didn't get to visit, but we drove by, and it's called like Millionaires or Billionaires Row or Millionaires Row or something like that, because literally the starting point for some of those plots are $1 million and up, which would have been crazy to see. We got to drive by where Marie Laveau was buried, but that particular cemetery you have to have guides to walk through, because unfortunately there are awful people out there, and they were vandalizing the graves, which I just don't even understand why you would do, because I mean, it's said that that city is like cursed, and so I don't know why you would vandalize somebody's grave. You are not, it's not going to go well for you. But yeah, just the history of who came over originally, because of course they had a really hard time getting people to come over, because the people that knew what that area was like, they're like, no thanks, I'm good. Like, no, I don't think so. So what kind of happened was there was this like businessman who was kind of conning people, he was conning people. And he was like, yeah, if you invest in this, I'll give you this land with these rolling hills and all this kind of stuff. And obviously that was a huge lie. I mean, if you've been to New Orleans, or if you know of the area at all, there's no fucking rolling hills. Like, it is marsh. As far as the eye can see, and it's very damp, and it's extremely low to the ground. Like, you are like at sea level, or just barely above it. And funny enough, the French Quarter is actually the highest point in New Orleans. And so this con man was going around getting all these people to move down there. And of course, once they got down there, they're like, fuck this, man. Like, there's no rolling hills. This land is awful to build on. Like, there's no growing anything. They're like, it's a scam. So then one of the kings, was it King Louis? I'll have to double check that. But there is another king who was like, okay, maybe we can solve two problems with one stone. Because first of all, my Bastilles are way too full, which if you don't know what that is, that's prison. And second of all, we need people to go colonize this area. So what he did was he gave the prisoners an option. He's like, all right, you've got two options. You can either stay in prison here for the rest of your life, or you can go and settle in this area that no one wants to live in, but you'll be complete, all your debts will be forgiven and you'll be a free man. So of course, what do you think they're going to choose? They chose to go move out to New Orleans. And so you had a vast variety of people living there. You had prostitutes living there, you had like pirates, you had smugglers, you had like all these prisoners for various reasons, all moving out there. So you had this very interesting combination of people. And then there was also at one point all these like women that moved out there, because of course their problem was they didn't have enough women to like help colonize either. So yeah, you got like prostitutes and all these ladies that were like going out there to pretty much marry these men. And then of course you had at one point the Puritans who moved out there, and of course they didn't want to be involved with all the other stuff that, like, they didn't of course celebrate Christmas or anything like that, which these other group of people did. So you had like a mix of Catholics, you had Puritans, you had, you know, of course, and then you got a lot of the voodoo is kind of Creole, like it just was a melting pot for a lot of different people, which is so cool. And you really do get that, like that vibe is very much there. And Creole, just so that you know, is not like an ethnicity, it is a culture. So you can be black, white, yellow, whatever color you are, and it's a culture. It's not actually an ethnicity, because you got people marrying from all walks of life coming together. And so like you got the French marrying the Americans, and it just became this big melting pot of different culture, which is so freaking cool. And I really have to say that New Orleans was amazing in that light, that they were so accepting of just everybody, which is such a breath of fresh air, because you do not get that everywhere. And it was so amazingly friendly. Like the people there are so nice. Like they are just, there's a reason it's called the Big Easy. You know, it's a reason why they say let the good times roll, because it really does feel like that, which is amazing considering how much they've been through as a culture and as a city. They still are just so welcoming and inviting, and it's about having just a good time and a good life and good food and good company. And I love that. I loved that about them. It was such a cool vibe. It really was. And I haven't felt that anywhere else that I've been. And so, yeah, it's just really cool. And of course the haunted stuff was really neat. Like I said, my mom's very empathic as well. She feels spirit probably even more than I do. She's had spiritual encounters and stuff, and she doesn't always love to feel that kind of stuff, so she definitely projects more of a protection aura around her versus me, who I'm kind of okay with experiencing it, you know, like, no, I don't want to be possessed or haunted by something like evil by any means, but if it's just the energies of spirits as a whole, I don't mind feeling it. And I felt it majorly. It was the oddest thing. Like anytime we were at a haunted spot, all of a sudden, of course that whole city is haunted, but the cemeteries especially, the minute we stepped inside of them, I was just so off balance and so dizzy, and this pressure. And the weird thing is I might mute it in the video, but so at the start of it, it was raining. At the first stop, you can hear the rain. The second stop and the other cemeteries, there was no rain, there was no wind, but yet you can hear this very distinct staticky sound as if there is wind going on. And my mom actually mentioned it when we got back to the hotel, because I was replaying the videos just to see if I caught anything, which I don't think I did. But even though in the one cemetery, I swear I kept seeing things out of the corner of my eye, like down the way. Like I kept seeing, I felt like shadows moving around, and it was very eerie. And I actually scared myself because I was looking around and there was a mom with her child behind us, and it was of course dark. So all I saw was this like figure, and I jumped because I swear I'd been seeing things and I thought they were like a ghost. They weren't, but yeah, it was crazy. Just the energy is so overwhelming down there. If you feel it at all, you're gonna feel it. And so yeah, it's crazy. It's so cool. But yeah, lots of cool haunted stories. One about a father killing his daughter because she embarrassed him, I guess, because she wanted to marry a sailor, but he wanted her to marry this douchebag of a citizen, but he was wealthy and he was well known in the village, and so she agreed to like one dinner with this guy, and of course he got handsy and inappropriate. The dad got mad at the daughter, which makes zero sense. And so then the boyfriend was like, hell no, you're not gonna touch my girl and get away with it. So he wanted to duel this other man, which at the time, New Orleans it was illegal to duel, but of course that didn't stop people, and there are certain areas in the grounds where that was like people went and did this. So the woman was going to stop this from happening, but she never made it there. And it was said that the father was seen in the same area that night, and he came home wet, and she was found 3 days later in the swamp, and she had drowned or killed or whatever. So it's highly suspected that the father actually killed her, which is insane, all to get more money. There's a little girl that haunts one of the Freemasons cemeteries, which was interesting because at the time when you were a Freemason back then, you had to agree to be buried all together in one plot. And so this plot is huge, but for some reason one night this guy was walking by the cemetery and saw this little girl in there. And he was like, oh my gosh, she's been locked in there, I need to go get help. And came back with the police, and of course she was gone. So it's like, explain that one to me. How is there a little girl there when no women and no children were allowed to be buried there? Because it was for the Masons, the men Masons. Now there are a couple groups of women Masons as well, which obviously isn't as well known, but that plot was only specific for men. The other stories were, there was this one house, and it was amazing because the tour guide actually had a lot of pictures of the spirits that had been caught by a lot of different people that have been there. And this one cemetery, which we weren't allowed to go into anymore, which was probably good because this one woman who did go in there, she all of a sudden felt like she couldn't breathe, like something was sitting on her chest, and so they thought she was having a heart attack. And so they brought her out, and the further away she got, the more she started feeling a little bit better, but she still just felt this presence behind her. And so she took a selfie behind her, and they actually had the picture, and there is this shadow figure like right behind her that obviously did not look friendly at all. And it's next to this house that had kind of a tragic history because of course yellow fever went through there multiple times, and they just could not figure out what was causing that. And so there is a family who had 5 children, and they lost 4 out of the 5 of them. And so there's a weeping woman that you can hear and see in the one building, and she sits in the top right hand window, and you can see her like weeping. And so she haunts there, and there's kids in there as well. And it's also a building that they use as a haunted attraction during Halloween, which would be another really cool time to go down to New Orleans because I'm sure they get very excited about Halloween. I think it would be so cool to go during Mardi Gras, but at the same time, I'm very overstimulated very easily, so I just feel like all those people and all the sights and sounds would just be overwhelming as much as it would be so cool to experience. Because we did go to Mardi Gras World, which is a huge warehouse where they just show you how they put together these floats, and it's amazing. It is an absolute amazing process, and the amount of skill and artistic talent is just incredible. Like, it's really is something to go and see and experience if you can't experience Mardi Gras itself. And but yeah, I would love to visit during Jazz Fest as well, just because I am in love with jazz music. there's something about it that I can't get enough of. And but I also just wonder how peoply it would be and how overwhelmed I would get. But we'll see. I am definitely not done with New Orleans, because there are other things that I would love to go and do. Like, I wouldn't mind taking a swamp tour. That was not something my mom was like wanting to do or into. And also I would love to like spend the night in a haunted location, even though I do feel like our last hotel was haunted, because I didn't experience anything at the 2 other hotels. But the last hotel, we only spent 1 night there. But I swear to you, in the middle of the night, I heard something walking around, like something was walking on the carpet. And I thought it was my mom. I thought that maybe she was getting up to go to the bathroom. And I looked over, she was dead asleep. Like, she was not awake, obviously not walking around. Her dog was in her bed sleeping. But there was distinct sound of someone like getting up and walking around. And then that next morning, my mom was in the bathroom getting ready, and all of a sudden I felt something, the bed go down, like as if somebody had sat down, and I wasn't facing that direction. So I turned around thinking it was my mom, maybe sitting down to put socks on or something. Nobody there, but it was the distinct feeling of somebody sitting down. It was very kind of eerie and a little bit creepy. I didn't see anything, but felt it and definitely heard things. And my mom even had like kind of a weird vibe about that room. And like we kept hearing sounds like kind of behind us as well, while we were eating that night. And there was definitely energy there. There is something there. I don't know how intelligent it was. It might have just been something, an impression of something still kind of there, just doing its thing, because I did hear the walking around like 2 times that night. So it might have been like a specific timing thing where it was just doing its rounds repeatedly. I don't know, but it was very, very odd. Yeah, and then of course so on the ghost tour, it was nice because they had a stop there for everybody, and it was it was definitely a vibe as well, where you walked in and it just felt kind of creepy. And on the one mirror, they had like these lights, but the mirrors were underneath, and there were like handprints on the windows. And for some reason with me, with haunted stuff, that's always what I encounter, are handprints. I've had handprints show up at my one house. There's a small handprint on my computer screen right now, which I'm not sure where that came from or at what point that showed up, but that's there. Then the handprints in the mirror. So if somebody knows what handprints mean, I would be really interested to know, because I get it right along where I just see random handprints that I'm like, well, that could have been a person, but the handprint currently on here is very tiny. Like very tiny. Like it's not my hand, not even close, but it's clearly a handprint. So, and they always look like children's handprints. Always look like children's. And yeah. So, and of course we went to Cafe du Monde, which is known for their beignets. And yes, I did have a couple bites of beignet, even though I'm gluten intolerant, and I did kind of pay for it later, but it was worth it because those things are delicious. Like I said, the French Quarter was super cool. A lot of boutique shops, amazing. Got some souvenirs, of course. The sweatshirt that you saw me sit down in is obviously one of them. I'll grab, you know what, let me grab the couple other things. So, of course, I had to represent and get the little sugar skull. This is an ornament that I will be putting on my tree, which I just thought just had a New Orleans kind of vibe to it. I also love the Day of the Dead. I absolutely love what it represents. Of course, you can't go to New Orleans and not get a voodoo doll. So, this one was super fun. Each of them, like, represented different things. This one represents compassion, but I just love the hair on it. Like, I thought that was so fun, and I love the pattern on it. And of course she's got her little gris bag, and They say they're authentic voodoo dolls. And of course I did go into a couple voodoo shops. The one they didn't want you to film in. The other one, I didn't see the sign. My mom said I guess that there was a sign, but I didn't see it. So you will see video of that one. And hopefully they won't like get too angry with me or somehow see it and like curse me or something. Because I honestly didn't see the sign for that. Of course, anytime I go to like a haunted city, because I'm obsessed with spirits and anywhere that's haunted, I cannot wait to go down deeper south into like Savannah, Georgia area and like experience some of those haunted places, because I know that city is extremely haunted. So of course I had to get the Haunted New Orleans book. There are some really cool locations in here that if I go back to New Orleans, I would love to do more of a deep dive into like the haunted areas. My mom was so gracious to do the haunted tour, but it was obviously ghostly related, but a lot of history based as well. They offer tons of different ghost tours though, and I would love to visit some of these places and maybe actually do some investigations, which would be amazingly cool. The one house that obviously has a reputation, and actually I don't think anyone can investigate it, even though it would be freaking cool and terrifying at the same time, is the LaLaurie Mansion. Nicolas Cage owned it at one point, and then they said that like his career kind of tanked after he had financial issues with the house, because they actually believe the house like cursed him. Delphine, I believe LaLaurie was her name, and she was a horrid lady, absolutely awful. She was a slave owner, and she did literally the worst things you could possibly think of to these slaves. She did. They believe that she still haunts the house and that there's a demonic force there potentially, as well as a lot of the spirits of the slaves that she hurt. There was a fire in the house because the one slave was literally chained to the kitchen table, and she decided that she'd rather lose her life than spend another day with Delphine. So she burned the house down, or burned part of the house, and several slaves died. They said that LaLaurie hung a lot of slaves from the rafters after mutilating them in awful, horrible ways. And as awful and horrible as that sounds, I would still investigate that place if they allowed me to. But of course, I'm not nearly popular enough, nor do I have any kind of social credit to be able to convince anyone to let me go in there and investigate, nor would I want to do it alone. But it would be super cool if one of the other ghosty people that are well known and make videos got to go there, and I would kill to be able to go on an investigation with somebody into that house, because I just feel like there's so much that we don't know about the house. But I don't believe anyone currently owns it. I don't think so, and in fact the government like doesn't even want people anywhere near it or inside of it, because they do believe that it is so cursed. So, but still, I would still go investigate it if I could. So got that. And lastly, I absolutely love local artists. I love any city I go to. I love getting a piece of local art. And so right when we got to the French Quarter, we found this place, and she does absolutely stunning artwork. Look at that. Is that not just gorgeous? Of course, it's of the French Quarter. And I mean, the architecture in the French Quarter alone is just beautiful. Like that's, and it's actually 2 miles long, believe it or not. I know a lot of people kind of feel like it's like a street or two, and then Bourbon Street's right next to it, but it's actually 2 miles of the French Quarter, which is super lovely. So this artist is Lila Claire, and Claire is spelled C-L-A-Y-R-E, and Lila L-Y-L-A. I don't know if she does artwork online or not, but just stunning. Like her art is amazing with the watercolors and just the scenes of New Orleans. Like this was the perfect picture to get to bring back home as remembrance. So I will frame that and put that somewhere, obviously. But yeah, that is all I got from New Orleans. Is there anything else I want to share with you about the trip before I just show you the rest of the video? This is going to be a super long video, and I'm really sorry for that, but it's so worth it because it was a cool experience. So yeah. Okay. So since I'm going to split up the two videos, the first part's going to be kind of about the history and kind of our experience while we were traveling. The second part is going to be the actual video part of the video footage and pictures that I took. So I am going to add one more little section onto this about Mardi Gras, because obviously the season of Carnival is the reason a lot of people know about New Orleans, or at least one of the major reasons why people love to go down there, as well as it is a big touristy city as well, and there's lots of different things to experience and highly recommend going. But Mardi Gras is obviously a big deal down there. And so, first of all, one misconception, I feel like a lot of people feel like Mardi Gras is just one parade. It is multiple parades. In fact, I think there's close to 400 different events and things, or was it like 400 different floats or something like that. 400 something, either floats within the 2 weeks of Mardi Gras or the 2 weeks leading up to Mardi Gras, or I mean, it's a big deal. Like, there's events weeks before, and then there's the actual, you know, Mardi Gras itself. And so the process for Mardi Gras is intense. So there's like crews, which is spelled with a K, and they are the ones that do the floats. So like the crews themselves, there's like 3 main ones. I don't remember the other 2 names, but one of them was Orpheus. And so the crews have their own parade as well as participate in Mardi Gras itself. And so these crews have dues that they have to pay, and it can be up to $1,000, $500 to $1,000 to be a part of the Mardi Gras. And that doesn't even necessarily mean you get to be on a float, but that means that you get to be part of the parade. Then not only that, but they also have throws, of course, which are any of the things that you see them throwing at you, like beads or cups or Beanie Babies or whatever they throw at you. That can be an additional $1,000. So another kind of cool thing about Mardi Gras, though, is that you will not see anyone being like promoted. So for instance, they don't have any sponsors, which the crews actually prefer this, because then they can put whatever the heck they want on their floats. And so you won't see Coca-Cola or any known sponsorships on any of these floats, which is kind of cool. They also do that because Carnival itself was literally a holiday where way back in the day, they were allowed 1 day to pretty much make fun of the king, make fun of their government, make fun of their politicians, and they wouldn't get in trouble for it. So you very much see that today too, that they will make fun of the government and the politicians. And obviously they can do that because they have no sponsorship, so they won't get in trouble. Also with the Mardi Gras, if you do partake, you have to wear a mask so that nobody knows who you are. So you also get to see a lot of people who come and visit during Mardi Gras all dressing up in different people, different things, different creatures. Like, it's a time to not be yourself, and that is very much promoted. And they kind of say that you don't just come and watch a Mardi Gras parade, you're a part of it. And so some of the throws, one of the crews, one of the women's crews does stiletto heels. So they like bejewel and sparkle up all these stilettos, and they like hand it to you. So back in the day, they used to like throw things at you. Now, like if it's a coconut, which has a funny story, or like a stiletto or something like that, they have to hand it to you. Otherwise, there actually is a fine that you have to pay, depending on who threw it. I think it was like 1,500 or something for the person that throws one of these non-throwable items. And if they don't know who throws it, everybody on that side of whoever threw it has to pay that amount. So they're pretty serious about that, because back in the day, they threw coconuts, and they would bejewel and sparkle a bunch of coconuts and literally throw it at people. And there was at one point, somebody got injured and they tried to sue for it. And of course, they didn't actually win, because they're like, well, you understood that things were going to be thrown, correct? And you were drunk, correct? So it's not really the people's responsibility because you were drunk and you got injured. So it was like a whole thing. So now if you have coconuts, you have to like hand them to people. But also Mardi Gras is, the colors represent stuff as well. So of course you have your main colors of purple, gold, and green. Green means faith, gold means power, and then purple represents justice. And like I said, going to Mardi Gras World was really, really cool because you get to learn the whole process behind making the floats and just the whole process of Mardi Gras in general. And it's really neat because they really use two different kinds of methods. They use fiberglass or they use styrofoam. Mainly styrofoam nowadays, just because fiberglass you can't reuse. So once you do fiberglass, it is the way it is. Whatever you've made has to stay that way. But with styrofoam, it's really cool because you may have one statue one year looking like Mickey Mouse, and the next year you might want to turn it into a king or a queen or something, and you can literally take pieces off of that statue and replace it with new pieces to create something totally new. But yet at the same time, you're kind of recycling the product as well. So they have this whole process of carving out, well, from the very start, sketching out a design, doing two different kind of color combinations through the computer, and then, you know, taking it into real life, sculpting it out of the styrofoam, creating many different layers for one kind of piece, and then they paper mache it. So they completely paper mache it, because otherwise if you put color over top of styrofoam, we all know how that looks. It isn't smooth, and it's very blotted and just doesn't look good. So they paper mache over the top, and then they spray the whole statue white, and then they go in and either like spray the color onto it or hand paint color onto it. And then they also have like a mix of latex and something to kind of help it be a little bit more waterproof. But I mean, some of these things, if there's like a lot of rain, it'll only last for like a couple days or a couple weeks before they have to kind of refix it. But it's very adaptable, and so it's this really cool process. And so Mardi Gras World is one of the main ones that does a lot of the art for it, and they actually go through someone else, I think somewhere else in Louisiana, to actually build the floats, the actual floats themselves. They go through someone else, but all the artwork and all the designs and stuff all go through Mardi Gras World mostly. They can use other people, but they're like the main one. So I thought that was pretty cool to learn about the history as well as kind of the concept behind Mardi Gras. And of course it was funny because my mom has never been like a huge fan of Mardi Gras, because obviously, yes, with Mardi Gras you have a lot of people just going and being crazy and letting their crazy hang out and loose and whatever. It's a time, it's a wild time, let's just say that. And mostly that's because that's what Mardi Gras kind of stands for, you know? It's a day to not be yourself. It's a day to make fun of government. It's a time to just be kind of rambunctious and rebellious. Like, that is kind of what it's meant for. And it's really cool because Carnival, that time, that season, you can find in many different countries. It's not just in New Orleans. And like, you have it in Brazil, you have it in Spain, you have it in all these different countries that partake and celebrate it. And of course it was brought over here, and it's kind of cool. It was really kind of cool to learn the history of it and more of the meaning behind it versus just what you see on TV, where, you know, women are flashing people and everyone's drunk and it's just crazy, you know. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit in there because the history is actually really fascinating. And I think I already mentioned, but there's not just one parade, there's like several, and there's different crews, as I mentioned, and our tour guide on the on-off bus that we were on, which is really cool. I highly recommend, I don't know if I mentioned it already, but the on-off bus, it takes you around to many different areas of New Orleans, like the Garden District, the French Quarter, other areas like the business area, the warehouse area, like many different areas of New Orleans. So you get a really well-rounded kind of scope of the city. But our tour guide was so awesome. He was really, really cool. And he was telling us how, of course, not everybody wants to afford $2,000 potentially to build a float or to be a part of a float. So he and his friends joined this crew that is all about like just being nerdy, as far as like different groups. You know, if you're a Harry Potter fan, if you're a Star Trek fan, if you're a Pokemon fan, or whatever group, fandom group that you're a part of, you can dress up and walk. So it's not even like a float, but you're all just walking in costume and stuff. And so I would, if I lived in New Orleans, you know I'd be at that one, like hands down. Of course I would be. And so they called themselves like the Chewbaccas or something. And at one point they actually created their own beer. And they said it was absolutely disgusting, but I guess you can still try it at one of the other, you know, distilleries, one of the main distilleries down there. But yeah, so they do that whole thing, which would be really fun to partake in. And the floats do not actually go into the French Quarter or Bourbon Street, because the streets are too narrow for the floats. So they're on some of the bigger streets and stuff. So they're not actually within that French Quarter, Bourbon Street area due to that fact. And then also with Mardi Gras, I guess there's like minimums. So you have to have like, I think either 8 to 14 floats minimum to be able to partake in one of those big parades. So it's like, it's a big deal. And then you have to have like so many marching bands and stuff like that. So these people who do Mardi Gras, I mean, it's a big deal. Like, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort. So a lot more goes on behind the scenes than what we just see on TV, which I thought was really pretty cool. I like the idea that they have like different balls and things as well, as the Mardi Gras events kind of take place. So they'll be in big event centers, and there'll be like different balls and things that you can join in on. So I just want to add that little tidbit in because I did find that like really interesting, since New Orleans is so well known for the carnival season and Mardi Gras. So yeah, that's all. Bye.